Today, I want to talk about what are known as standing waves in a transmission line. They occur in a lossy line as well as in a lossless line, but we would do the analysis only for lossless line. What really happens is you have an incident voltage wave and a reflected voltage wave, so they interact with each other. Along the length of the line, we see maxima and minima in the value of the magnitude of voltage. And similar things happen to current also. These maxima and minima are periodic and they are stationary in the sense that they don't change much with time. That is why the word standing waves has been brought in to describe them. In fact, in the next semester in microwave lab, there is at least one experiment on standing waves. You will see that standing waves can actually be observed on a transmission line, and theory predicts them quite accurately. What is the theory? Let's put it this way. Let's assume a lossless line where the direction of propagation is the z-axis, plus z is the direction of propagation of forward traveling wave, minus z is the direction of traveling of the reflected wave for both voltage and current. These are the formulas we know by now, I'm sure, very well, that the Z and T dependence of voltage and current is described by these two equations. I'm assuming periodic signals, so e to the power plus j omega t type of time dependence has been shown. Now, suppose I am interested only in magnitude of V and also magnitude of only I. Then what happens? Let me rewrite equation 115 by taking v to the power v plus e to the power minus j beta z out, and e to the power j omega t is already out. So if I take that within the parenthesis, I will get 1 plus v minus divided by v plus multiplied by e to the power plus 2j beta z. Okay, similar operation can be done on current equation also. So the voltage equation becomes something like this. Now we have defined V minus divided by V plus as the voltage reflection coefficient at the input end. And we have derived this formula, equation 117 already. So if I use that definition, I can write V as a function of Z and T as given by equation 118. Okay. Now I take magnitude of V. In general, V plus will be a complex number, so I'll take magnitude of that. Magnitude of e to the power j omega t minus beta z will be 1. So that term goes out. I get magnitude of 1 plus tau 0 e to the power plus j to beta z. And now time is gone away because I am talking only magnitudes. T disappears from the equation. So I'll simply call it magnitude of Vz. Okay. Similar operation on the current equation will lead me to this. Magnitude of I Z(t), which I am going to call magnitude of I Z, is given by magnitude of V plus divided by Z naught and magnitude of 1 minus tau 0 e to the power plus 2j beta Z. Now, in general, tau 0 will be a complex number because ZL can be a complex number. Z naught can also be complex, who knows? But let's start with the assumption that ZL is real and Z naught is also real. Let's see how things go with that assumption. So tau 0 is a real number, suppose, to begin with at least, case A. Then the magnitude of V, Z, will simply be magnitude of V plus multiplied by 1 plus tau 0 e to the power j2 beta. That remains as it is. Okay. Now what happens to this magnitude? E to the power j2 beta Z, maximum value is plus 1 and minimum value is minus 1. If 2 beta Z is 0 or 2 pi or 4 pi or 6 pi, then e to the power 2 j beta Z will be 1. If 2 beta Z is pi or 3 pi or 5 pi, then e to the power j2 beta Z will be minus 1. So what you see is, and I'll show that in a picture soon, what you see is if Z changes, that means you're traveling along the length of the line and observing the magnitude of V, you will see maxima, minima successively. One maximum followed by a minimum, then maximum, then minimum. And the value of the maximum voltage will be Vmax equal to magnitude of V plus multiplied by 1 plus tau 0. At that point, e to the power j2 beta Z will be 1 plus 1. And value of minimum voltage will be 1 minus tau 0 multiplied by magnitude of V plus. At that point, e to the power j2 beta Z will be equal to minus. This behavior is stationary. It doesn't change with time. That is why it is known as standing wave, voltage standing wave. Similarly, for current also, when voltage is maximum, that means when voltage is e to the power j2 beta, when e to the power j2 beta Z is plus 1, that is the time when you will see current as minimum, because there is a minus sign in current equation. And when voltage is minimum, then you will see maximum current. When voltage is maximum, you will see minimum current. These are complementary quantities. They don't see maxima together. Very easy to figure out because of the minus sign in current equation, the result is opposite for the same value of e to the power j2 beta Z. You get current standing waves also, like voltage standing waves. These can be observed experimentally. Voltage standing wave is reasonably easy. Current standing wave can also be observed if necessary. You need current probes, which you move along the length of the line and pick up a signal proportional to the current flowing in the line. It can be measured also. Okay, so the condition for voltage maxima or current minima is e to the power plus 2j beta Z equal to 1. And the condition for voltage minimum or current maximum, it should be minima and maxima actually, but fine, because there's more than one minimum and more than one maximum. So current, that condition is e to the power j2 beta Z equal to minus 1. Now we define a standing wave ratio. In fact, two standing wave ratios. One of them is known as voltage standing wave ratio, VSWR, which is Vmax divided by Vmin. And it's a real number because we are talking magnitude of V. And Vmax divided by Vmin is very easy to figure out from equations 121 and 122. Magnitude of V plus goes out. So you get 1 plus tau 0 divided by 1 minus tau 0. That is VSWR equation. Similarly, for current, CSWR, current standing wave ratio is defined as I max upon I min. And that also turns out to have the same value as VSWR. In fact, the general term that we use is SWR to denote both VSWR and CSWR. The symbol used is capital S. In some books, they use small s for denoting SWR on the line. Now, in the worst case, tau 0 can be 1. And, the value of tau can go from 0 to 1. If it is 1, you will get infinity VSWR. It's theory. It doesn't happen in real life, but you'll get a very high VSWR, that's for sure. And if tau happens to be, you can figure out. Basically, what happens is VSWR will never be below 1. Maximum to minimum ratio will never be below 1. But it can be anything above 1. We'll see that again and again subsequently. Now, how about the locations? Let us investigate a little bit more in detail. For voltage maxima, e to the power j2 beta z should be plus 1, and I'm denoting that particular solution as ZV max. That means 2 beta ZV max should be either 0 or 2 pi or 4 pi or so, and so on. So ZV max, which is also ZI min, position is same for current minimum and voltage maximum. So the formula becomes 2 m pi divided by 2 beta, where m is an integer starting from 0 going to 1, 2, 3, etc. So what we get is that ZV max is either 0 or it's lambda by 2 or lambda or 3 lambda by 2 and so on. There is a difference of lambda by 2 between two successive voltage maximum locations. And the similar story applies to locations of current minima. They are separated by lambda by 2 also. Okay. Now the reverse or the complementary parts. Positions of the voltage minimum or voltage minima, which will also mean current maxima. Here now we have got -1 on the right hand side. Previously we had +1. So here the answer you can figure out. Now 2 beta Z V minimum should be pi, 3 pi, 5 pi, etc. I'm writing that as 2n plus 1 multiplied by pi, where n is an integer different from m. It is 0, 1, 2, 3. In this case, what we find is that voltage minima are at lambda by 4, 3 lambda by 4, 5 lambda by 4, and so on. And current maxima also at the same location. So if you see these results carefully, you will see that the first voltage maximum occurs at 0 and first voltage minimum occurs at lambda by 4. So difference between them, difference between their locations is lambda by 4. And so on. You can study their relative positions. A lot of inferences I have drawn. Hopefully there's no mistake. Distance between two successive voltage maxima is lambda by 2. Distance between two successive voltage minima is also lambda by 2. Distance between two successive current maxima is also lambda by 2. Distance between two successive current minima is also lambda by 2. Distance between a voltage maximum and the next voltage minimum is lambda by 4. Distance between a current maximum and the next current minimum is lambda by 4. I'll show this in this diagram. This is from Sadiku's book. It's a lossless line with a real load, which is the case I'm considering right now. You see that wherever voltage is maximum, current is minimum. and wherever voltage is minimum, current is maximum. That's the expected behavior. For lossy lines, what happens is this situation remains almost intact, but uh, each successive maximum is slightly lower in magnitude compared to the previous one. The locations don't change, but there is a gradual decay in the value of the maxima and minima in a lossy line. That is the difference. I'm not analyzing that, but it is something that is intuitively obvious to me at least. Okay. The locations are shown here. Basically, every lambda by 4 distance you travel, something happens. Okay. These are standing waves. They don't change with time. Now, second case, suppose the load is not real, then tau will have a modulus and an angle in it. Let's say that angle is phi and the magnitude is of course tau 0. We can again look at this carefully. Now, instead of e to the power j 2 beta z, what we are saying is e to the power j phi plus 2 beta z. So the equation for maxima in voltage wave will be now e to the power j 2 beta z plus phi equal to plus 1. And equation for minima will be e to the power j 2 beta z plus phi equal to minus 1. But the maximum value of e to the power j something, that would still be plus 1, even if phi is included. And minimum value will be minus 1, despite including phi. Okay. So Vmax now is written slightly differently. We write Vmax equal to magnitude of V plus multiplied by 1 plus magnitude of tau naught. Okay, it's obvious. Because e to the power j something will go to 1, plus 1 at maximum. At minimum, that will go to minus 1. So minimum value is V plus magnitude multiplied by 1 minus magnitude of tau naught. So VSWR now is written by this equation. When tau was real, magnitude was not involved. You simply wrote tau 0. But in case of a complex tau, you take magnitude of that tau to calculate VSWR. I've seen mistakes made in exams. People take actual complex value of tau and then come up with complex answer for VSWR. That's not correct. VSWR is a real number. CSWR also, same thing. Whatever reflection coefficient you get, take magnitude of it and then use equation 139. So VSWR has to be a real number. It can never be a complex number. Although tau may be a complex number. And now I'm not doing too many derivations. For any given problem, you basically start with these equations and solve them. Rather than trying to analyze this problem to death, it is better to start with what logic tells you and then figure out things. That's what I'm going to show you now by looking at some solved problems involving VSWR, etc. Maybe before that, I'll show you a problem which may not have VSWR in it, but it is worth looking at. Actually, it has VSWR, I think. Yeah, it has VSWR in it. A 300 ohm lossless air transmission line. By the way, the word lossless is not always going to mean air. There can be lossless media other than air also. That is why this problem carefully states lossless and air together. So a 300 ohm, that means Z0 is 300 ohm. A 300 ohm lossless air transmission line is connected to a complex load composed of a resistor in series with an inductor as shown below. 600 ohm resistor in series with a 0.02 millihenry inductor. Z0 for the line is 300 ohm. It's a lossless line. At 5 megahertz, determine tau L, that means complex value of reflection coefficient at the load. Then VSWR, which is also the same thing as CSWR. In fact, we generally call it SWR. Location of voltage maximum nearest to the load. That means the first voltage maximum closest to the load. And location of the current maximum nearest to the load. Okay. First thing, of course, you have to do is calculate ZL. At 5 megahertz, J omega L has to be obtained. RL is obviously 600 ohm. What I got was 600 plus J 200 pi ohm as the value of ZL. And in polar form, it became 868.78 with an angle of 46.32 degrees. So the formula, first part is calculate tau L. Formula is simple here. I plug in all the values. You have to do these things carefully. In the exam, time pressure is there, I know. But it's worth spending extra 30 seconds to 1 minute on checking the calculations. Again, it's a good idea to use polar representation or division. So the answer that I got for tau L is 0.6343 magnitude and 29.56 degree angle. Phi is 29.56 degrees. Phi is the angle of the reflection coefficient. In rectangular form also I have done the calculation. We may or may not need it. Now second part is SWR, which is 1 plus magnitude of tau L divided by 1 minus magnitude of tau L. So you simply take 1 plus 0.6343 divided by 1 minus 0.6343. The answer is 4.47. The best VSWR or the best SWR is 1. You can never go below that. The higher you are compared to 1, the situation is bad. That means more and more reflections are happening. If it's a perfectly matched load, standing wave will be a simple horizontal line. There will be no maxima, no minima. Okay, and S will be 1 in that case. On the other hand, if it's an open circuited line, S will be infinity. Minima will be almost 0, maxima will be almost infinity. Short circuited line, same thing. We can prove it maybe later. So B is simple enough. It's a real answer. Never give complex answers for SWR values. Now the third part, location of voltage maximum nearest to the load. Note that they have not given you length of the line. And most likely we are not going to need that information. Let's say the length is small l anyway, and let's see what we do. Let us say that the line's physical length is small l. We know that tau 0 and tau L are connected by this equation. It's a lossless line, so no alpha involved at all. Here I put the value of tau L that I got, 0.6343 e to the power minus j2 beta L multiplied by a to the power j 29.56 degree. Whenever I am writing degrees, I am always careful to put a small circle on top. If you don't do that, it would be understood that you mean radians. It's a symbolic thing, but it's important to maintain it. Anyway, in the next step, I have put everything in radians. I have converted 29.56 degrees in radians. So tau 0 is 0.6343 e to the power j within parentheses 0.5159 minus 2 beta L. Now we know, again, I'm starting with the basic equation. Rather than going by memory, let me start from the beginning. This is the equation for Vz. I take V plus out, I'll get, in fact, I take V to the, I take V plus e to the power minus j beta z out, I'll get, yeah, I made a mistake here, I think. It should be V plus then 1 plus 0.6343 e to the power minus j2 beta z. And anyway, the point remains that what you are getting is 1 plus rho 0 multiplied by e to the power minus j2 beta z. Okay. So the maximum would occur when this entire term goes e to the power j whatever, that entire term goes to 1. Maximum would occur then. Okay. I'll double check this equation. There's a term missing, I think, which doesn't matter anyway for calculating the locations. So for first maximum, if the location is z equal to z1, then entire term containing e to the power j something should go to 1. Okay. And that solves to L minus Z1 equal to, you can follow these steps carefully, L minus Z1 is 2.4632 meter. That is what they're asking. They want the location of the first voltage maximum from the load side. So L minus Z1 is the correct answer. You don't need to know L. Okay. That is why L is not given in the problem. L minus Z1 is what is needed, and that we can figure out by equating e to the power j, the entire term, 2 beta into Z1 minus L plus 0.5159. That entire term equal to 1. Okay. Try to follow these steps carefully. Now, for first current maximum, you can do the similar exercise, but we have already seen that there is a lambda by 4 difference between first voltage minimum and first current minimum. So I can use that fact right away. Simple enough, you know. Z2 will be Z1 minus lambda by 4. If Z2 is the location of the first current maximum. So L minus Z2 will be L minus Z1 plus lambda by 4. You can do the calculation. The answer turns out to be 17.462. Keep in mind, lambda can be calculated. It's an airline operating at 5 megahertz. Lambda will work out to 60 meters, I think, using the famous equation, speed of light divided by frequency. Lambda will work out to 60 meters, 60. So lambda by 4 will be 15 meters. That is what I'm using here. I have not shown it, but it's understood that you can do it. Okay, second problem. Here also VSWR is involved. Although locations are not being asked for, but VSWR is involved. A load with impedance ZL equal to 25 minus J50 ohm is to be connected to a lossless transmission line with characteristic impedance Z0, with Z0 chosen such that the SWR is the smallest possible value. What should ZO be? What should characteristic impedance be? You know, VSWR is 1 plus magnitude of tau divided by 1 minus magnitude of tau. In a lossless line, magnitude of tau is the same, no matter at what location you are looking. So magnitude of tau is ZL minus Z0 upon ZL plus Z0. ZL is given 25 minus J50 minus Z0 divided by 25 minus J50 plus Z. This is the magnitude of tau. I took the magnitude using standard complex algebra. I get this equation, square root of ZO square minus 50 ZO plus 3125 divided by ZO square plus 50 Z0 plus 3125. That is magnitude of tau. Now our job is to minimize S with respect by changing Z. By changing Z naught. So S is 1 plus magnitude of tau divided by 1 minus magnitude of tau, which means this equation where F1 is the top expression under the parenthesis and F2 is the bottom expression. It's a little bit involved derivation. What you do from this point onward is ds by dz naught equal to 0. To minimize the value of s, you put ds by dz naught equal to 0. I broke it up into this ds by d magnitude of tau multiplied by d magnitude of tau dz naught equal to 0. That is possible, right? What essentially it works out to is d by dz naught of magnitude of tau should be 0. The other differential, you can assume that it's not 0. If you're not sure, we can debate this issue, but I'm convinced that I'm doing the right thing. D magnitude of tau by dz naught should be 0. And that also, it is magnitude of tau, which is actually square root of something, right? So there also you can take the differential coefficient of this. It will be half this entire thing to the power minus 3 by 2, and then d by dz naught of this entire function. That part can also be ignored because that will never be 0. So what I got intuitively, and if you want, you can investigate this further. What I'm claiming is that I should have this demand imposed. D by dz naught of this entire function without square root should be 0. If you're not convinced, we can debate later. Just take it from me right now. And that is relatively easy to handle. You can be more rigorous than this. I know that. I'm just going by my long experience in such things, that this is the right thing to do. So if once you have got this, it's easy to do the differential now. Numerator multiplied by the differential coefficient of the denominator minus denominator multiplied by the differential coefficient of the numerator divided by whatever. The divided by something would also disappear because there is a 0 on the right hand side. So differential coefficient of denominator is 2z naught plus 50. Differential coefficient of numerator is 2z naught minus 50. That's what I have put here. And I solve the resulting equation. It becomes a cubic equation, but fortunately, z naught cube term cancels out on both sides. A lot of things cancel out here. We end up getting 100 z naught square equal to 312500. That means z naught square is 3125 ohm square, of course, if you want to be careful about the units. So Z naught answer is 55.90, and that is the answer given. I took this problem from somewhere. This is the correct answer. Actually, there's a lot more rigor that is necessary. I realize that because you have ds by dz naught equal to 0 proves that it could be a maximum or a minimum. So you better take the second order derivative and make sure it has the appropriate sign to make sure that s is really minimized. I leave that to you, but I think this is fine intuitively to me. I have not done it, but you can do it. Put this value of z naught that you have figured out back into the formula for tau, and from there figure out minimum s. That will convince you that we indeed have a minimum s. It should be a small value. It cannot be less than 1 for sure, but it should be close enough to 1. Okay, so that will convince you that the answer we have got is actually producing minimum s rather than going too rigorously mathematically. Okay, study this problem. We can debate it if you really wish to. Third one, I don't think it has VSWR in it. A 50 ohm lossless transmission line is connected to a load composed of a 75 ohm resistor in series with a capacitor of unknown capacitance. If at 10 megahertz, VSWR is there again. If at 10 megahertz, the VSWR has been measured to be 3.0, determine the value of the capacitance of the capacitor. ZL is 75 minus j omega c, and it's a lossless transmission line. Z0 is 50 ohm. So first thing you do is ZL equal to 75 minus j upon omega c. I'll put the value of omega later. Right now I'm going ahead with omega sign here. S is 3. It should be 1 plus magnitude of tau divided by 1 minus magnitude of tau. I can rewrite it as tau equal to S minus 1 upon S plus 1. Right? Simple algebraic manipulation. So tau for VSWR equal to 3, the magnitude of tau is 0.5. This is a standard equation we use to convert VSWR into magnitude of tau and other way around. So magnitude of tau has to be 0.5, and it has to be ZL minus Z0 divided by ZL plus Z0. The rest is all mathematical calculation. Magnitude of ZL is 75 minus J divided by omega c, minus Z0 divided by 75 minus J divided by omega c plus 50. This is magnitude of tau, which is 0.5. We have calculated already based on SWR that is given to us. And then I simplify this. I take 75 minus 50, which is 25. And in the denominator, it becomes 75 plus 50, which is 125. I take the magnitude, equate the result on both sides, solve the equation. I get 3 divided by omega square c square equal to 13125. So omega square c square becomes 3 divided by 131. You can do it, I'm sure. Omega c turns out to be so many more. And now omega can be put back. I have not shown you all the details, but you can do it. Omega will be 2 pi multiplied by 10 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 6 radians per second. So put that value here. The calculated value of C should be this 240.62 picofarad. The given answer was, I think, 241 picofarad. I think I'm close enough. So VSWR actually is a very popular concept along with reflection coefficient that you encounter all the time in transmission lines. A good reflection coefficient essentially means smaller VSWR. That means a lower reflection coefficient is always accompanied by a lower VSWR or CSWR. Okay, one more. This is a lossy transmission line, and fortunately, we are not talking about VSWR, CSWR, etc. here. Now, there are two notations here involving C. One means capacitance per unit length. The other is a part of ABCD parameters. So don't confuse the two. It is always a peculiar situation when you have the same symbol appearing twice, but with different meanings. So, but we should be intelligent enough to figure out that this C shown at the bottom of the problem is not the same C as that at the top. So primary constants are given for this line, and they are asking us to calculate ABCD parameters. We have done the derivations. What I want to insist on is that you should also know how to handle the calculations. They are fairly confusing if you are not careful about them. Sadhku also talks about detailed calculations, especially in lossy transmission lines, because hyperbolic functions are involved. You got to be careful about them. They cannot, hyperbolic function of a complex number cannot be done on the calculator directly. That is the problem. I'll show you how to handle it. Z is R plus j omega L. This is impedance of the line per unit length. I put the values. along with omega, which is given to me as 500 megahertz. I get Z equal to 3141.59 with an angle of 89.96 degrees. It is almost a purely imaginary number. The real part is very small, but it is not zero. Similarly, for y, you should calculate g plus j omega c. G has been given as zero anyway, which is good for us. So y will be a purely imaginary number. You can double check the calculations. Once I have got z and y, complex propagation constant is the square root of zy. So I take 3141.59, multiplied it by 0.00314116, take the square root, I get 3.1416. I add, when I multiply, the two angles get added, 90 degree and 89.96 degrees. But because of the square root, you have to divide the result by 2. So gamma has a phase angle of 89.98 degrees. It is almost totally imaginary. It is almost like a lossless line, but not really. Some alpha is there. You calculate gamma equal to alpha plus j beta. That means you can calculate alpha and beta from there. Put real part equal to alpha and imaginary part equal to beta based on this result that we have got. Alpha, you can double check, turns out to be 0.0011 Nepar per meter. Beta turns out to be almost 180 degree per meter, 3.1416 radian per meter. So far, so good. Z naught also needs to be calculated. It is the square root of Z divided by Y. I plug in the values, I get almost a real answer. Phase is almost zero. Z naught turns out to be 1000 ohm. You can see that yourself. If you divide Z by Y, 89.96 and 80 and 90 degree. The difference is very small, so I ignored it. I only took the modulus of Z and Y and divided modulus of Z by modulus of Y and took the square root. Z naught is almost a real number, 1000. By the way, we have not proven it, but whenever Z naught is a real number, it is a distortionless line. Sadhguru talks about it, and it's, I think, easy enough to prove. Now, calculating ABCD parameters. A, we have derived in the past, is cos hyperbolic of gamma L. We have done the derivations in the past for a lossy line. And A is same as D. B is Z naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. C is Y naught sine hyperbolic gamma L. Y naught is 1 upon Z naught. Move. Now, how do you calculate cos hyperbolic of a complex number? That is the essential point I'm trying to discuss right now. Calculations can be done once you know how to handle them. Gamma L will be alpha L plus J beta L. So cos hyperbolic gamma L will be e to the power gamma L plus e to the power minus gamma L divided by 2, which means e to the power, by the way, L is 1 meter. Okay, so alpha L is simply alpha and beta L is simply beta in this particular case. That's why I'm writing e to the power 0.0011 e to the power j 3 point something plus e to the power minus j 0.011 e to the power minus j 3 point. This is how you have to do the calculations. You can now do the calculation on calculator. E to the power 0.0011 gives you 1.0011. E to the power j pi gives you almost minus 1. E to the power minus 0.0011 gives you 0.9989. E to the power minus j pi. I'm being a little approximate, I know. That gives you minus 1 minus j0. So this is how you do the calculation. You do the real part separately, imaginary part separately. Basically, e to the power j of something means cos of that plus j sine of that. So cos and sine can be done on the calculator. That's what I have done. Cos hyperbolic gamma L turns out to be a real number because it's almost a lossless sign. But there may be situations when alpha is large enough so that you will not get this answer. You make a complex value for cos hyperbolic gamma L, depending on alpha value. So cos hyperbolic gamma L turns out to be -1, and in a similar manner, I try sine hyperbolic gamma L. In this particular case, this turns out to be also almost equal to -1. Then it's easy. You plug in the equation. A is -1, because cos hyperbolic gamma L is almost -1. These are approximate answers. D is also -1. Z0 is 1000 ohm. So B would be 1000 multiplied by, oh sorry, sine hyperbolic gamma L is 0. I'm sorry. Yes. That's what will happen. If you take in this equation, instead of adding, if you subtract the two terms, you'll get 0. Yes, almost 0. Sine hyperbolic gamma L is 0. So both B and C go to 0. The ABCD parameters turn out to be approximately given by -1, 0, 0, and -1. It may not be that way in all lossy lines. Here alpha was very small. So we ended up getting almost like it is a lossless line. And it's a reciprocal network. You can see AD minus BC equal to 1 here. Okay. Okay, one more little problem, then I'm stopping. Okay, we are running out of time. Yeah, yes, quickly, okay. If ZL is so much in the previous problem, what will be VSWR? This should be simple. You put ZL and Z0 is 1000 ohm. You take the magnitude of tau L. This time I have used rectangular form throughout. So magnitude of tau L turns out to be 0.4472. So S will be, what do they want? VSW, okay, I have no, yeah, VSWR is on the left hand side, sorry. VSWR is 1 plus magnitude of tau L divided by 1 minus magnitude of tau L. So 1 plus 0.4472 divided by 1 minus 0.4472. That's 2.62. Input refraction coefficient for the same problem will be load refraction coefficient multiplied by e to the power minus j2 beta L, assuming lossless line. It's very easy. Only the angle will change. Okay, 63.44 degree minus 360 degrees, because line is 1 meter long. You can figure out, you can look at this answer yourself. Okay, it should be easy enough. Input impedance turns out to be same as load impedance in this case. I think line is lambda long or lambda by 2 long. That is why it is. Okay. Okay, this position calculation I would like you to tackle. If you have difficulty, I can help.